When you dine at a restaurant, how do you know if the dish you order is being prepared in a safe manner, that the kitchen is clean, and that the staff have appropriate food safety training? And if you wanted to know, would you know how to find the latest inspection report? I'm Dave Breakenridge, and this is 10-3. MacEwan University Associate Professor Steve Lillebuen joins me to discuss what an investigation revealed about infractions found in Edmonton kitchens, gaps in the province's inspection system, and what restaurant workers and customers want to see changed. Don't forget you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music. I'd love it if you could leave us a rating, a review, and tell your friends about the show. So Steve, you and your investigative journalism class at MacEwan University in Edmonton recently worked on a series in collaboration with the Edmonton Journal looking at restaurant inspections and concerns that were raised about both the inspection process and the restaurants themselves. And before we get into some of the details, I'm curious, what was the genesis for your class's investigations into restaurant inspections?
Yeah, great question. I'm a big believer in collaboration, particularly with investigations. They can be really time consuming. And I remember the Edmonton Journal did this fantastic series on restaurants and restaurant inspections nearly 20 years ago. So I thought, this was the right time that we could look at the industry again and answer that question. How safe is our food? How closely is it being monitored? So I thought, let's put together a team, some of the top reporters at Post Media, myself and my students. And if we pool our resources, we'd have the people power to really do a very thorough job of examining restaurants, one more time. It's, I think for me, just such an important topic. We all eat out at restaurants, we all order food, and we don't often give enough thought to how safe is this food, right? There's a lot of trust put in that the inspection system is there to protect us and we don't have to worry about it. So that's what I wanted to find out is that trust misplaced, or can we trust that, the bad operators are being looked after?
Now, when you were setting out to look at this, was it just the inspections reports, the idea that, are restaurants failing and how are they doing or what are inspectors finding? Or did you look at other facets in the restaurant industry, whether that's staff or customers? Kind of what was the scope of everything that you and your class investigated?
Yeah, because we had so many people involved in this, we could really dig very, very deep. So not only did we look at the inspection reports and gathered about 3 years worth of data, but we were able to interview, I think it was over 160 customers who regularly eat out to, capture their experiences and what are they seeing in restaurants. And we were also able to interview over 60 people that work in the restaurant industry. And they were able to tell us, things they've personally witnessed while working in the kitchen or being a server and seeing what's going on inside those kitchens. And lastly, we also talked to some very well-known chefs in the city who run clean kitchens and are actually speaking out about this issue as well, because they're obviously concerned that if we can't trust the inspection system, they don't have a way to tell the customers, we're actually a good restaurant. We actually care about your safety. So they were very interested in speaking out and telling the public how hard they work to keep a clean kitchen.
Yeah, I can imagine that one bad apple can spoil the whole bunch for a lot of people. When you're looking at the data itself, when you're looking at the inspections, how many were there that you had to go through and what was the work involved there?
Yeah, this was very difficult because the data isn't easy to access. You can't just go online and download all the inspection reports. There's like a database that the Alberta government runs that if you type in a restaurant name, you can see the last inspection, but it's quite archaic. It's about 20 years out of date. And, lots of criticisms of how user-friendly it just hasn't kept up with the times. So we actually had to build our own web scraper that the team at Post Media built software that could actually pull all of the data off of the website so we could actually take a look at it and, analyze what do these numbers mean. So that's took a huge chunk of time. And I think it was over 50,000 records we were able to pull off the website. And yeah, what we found was shocking when we were finally able to look at the numbers and, analyze them. I was really shocked at what we found.
And what is it that kind of stood out for you? Was it the number of establishments that had infractions? Was it repeat violators? Was it the state of of things in restaurants? What some of the violations were?
Yeah, I think the key stat is what people in food safety industries really look at is your compliance rate. And that's how many restaurants are fully complying with all of the food safety laws. And that compliance rate can tell you how well the industry is doing. And we found that in the Edmonton's food establishments, 77% of places that were inspected were not fully compliant with food safety regulations. So that means like 3 out of 4 restaurants had issues. So that was alarming to me. I didn't think it'd be 3/4 of the industry actually weren't fully compliant and had violations. And that means, only 23% of restaurants actually had a complete, clean bill when an inspector came to see them.
And when restaurants were in violation, are they re-inspected after a period? Are there follow-up inspections finding issues? Are we seeing restaurants shut down in more severe cases?
Yeah, that's something that surprised us is that although there are follow-up inspections, if an inspector, sees what's called a critical violation, that's something that is an immediate risk to public health. So there is quite a variety here. It can be maybe someone hasn't cleaned a table versus someone's left, raw meat out for hours. Those are obviously very different violations. So a critical violation is one that could actually make someone sick. And there was actually thousands of those critical violations that then trigger a follow-up. An inspector will come back after a few weeks to see if you've cleaned up your act. And we found that 40% of those restaurants still had a critical violation after a follow-up inspection. So there seems to be this kind of repeat going on that the violations are cited, they come back, they're cited again, and there just isn't an enforcement to actually force those bad restaurants to change their behavior.
Are there gaps in the system when it comes to this? Are there, whether it comes to education to help these restaurants not have bad inspections when there's follow-up? Or is there an issue with inspections to begin with? Are there enough inspectors to go around? What did you see based on the data that your class dug up?
Yeah, we did lots of comparisons with other cities and provinces and try to see kind of what the situation is. And one thing that really stood out was the a large gap between inspections. So in Alberta, they have a target of visiting a place once every 12 months, but they weren't actually meeting that target. We found, over 250 places in Edmonton that had no record of inspection for more than 2 years. So really far behind on inspections. And even compared to other provinces, they do inspections up to 3 times a year, whereas Alberta was struggling just to even hit 1. So there's a large gap there, which when we spoke to food safety experts, they said that's one area that you could, make a huge difference if you actually increase the number of inspections.
We'll be right back. And as you mentioned, you talked to a number of restaurant workers about their experience in kitchens in the city and food inspections and training. And I'm curious, what did they have to say? I imagine not many of them wanted to have their names out there if they're working in the industry, but I am curious what they told you about what they're seeing on the front lines.
Yeah, we spoke with over 60 people who work in restaurants, and you're right, only a couple of them were willing to have their name on record because they were concerned about retribution, if they were revealing what's going on in the restaurant industry, that would affect their future employment. But yeah, these 60 people, they told us, what they witness, and, they see everything from, I think the biggest violation they frequently saw was infrequent hand washing. That's just not happening. That's like the easiest thing you can do to stop foodborne illness is ensure people are actually washing their hands with soap and water. But they told us a lot of revolting stories of things that they've seen in restaurants, even as far as, I thought this was an urban myth, but a restaurant worker recalls seeing a steak actually fall off a plate. And rather than throwing it out, they just put it back on the grill for a few minutes and then replated it and served it to a customer.
Oh, that is pretty bad. I would hate to get that steak.
Yes, exactly.
Now, you talk about infrequent hand washing. That's the kind of thing that I would assume through proper training that people would know. Did restaurant workers talk about a training gap? Were they getting the requisite training?
Yeah, that's something that stood out as well, was there was a real lack of training that many of the people who were entering the restaurant industry were coming at it from other careers, or it was their first job or second job, and didn't get a lot of the on-the-job training that they were expecting. And Alberta doesn't require that either. One thing that surprised us was that there is a quite robust system to ensure anyone serving alcohol has to complete this safety program to ensure responsible service. That's mandatory for anyone serving alcohol. But in restaurants, you only need one person in that restaurant on duty to have any sort of safety and hygiene and sanitation training. It's not everyone. So some restaurants, if you have quite a large place, you could have dozens of staff who've actually never done any sanitation training, who are working there, and only one person on duty actually knows the rules and has actually gone through a training program.
Earlier, you mentioned looking at what other cities do when it comes to inspections. You talk about more frequent inspections, but when it comes to letting the public know or letting the public be aware about issues in restaurants, how do other places compare to Alberta, and what are they doing that Alberta may not be doing?
Yeah, we found some very simple and inexpensive fixes that would have an immediate result and likely really reduce the rate of foodborne illness in Edmonton and Alberta. And that's from a number of different cities, from Toronto to New York or LA. They all do something similar, and that's like a color coded or a letter grading system. So when you walk into a restaurant, they actually have something right there on the door for you to see, whether it's a color coded or a letter grade, A, B, C, D, to let you know how safe is this restaurant. So if you walk in there, it's got, say, a green sign, you know that it's passed its most recent inspection. If it's yellow, there's some, critical violations that are a concern, or if it's red, it's been shut down. So that gives the public sort of this immediate transparency that the customers can have confidence that I'm about to sit down at this restaurant. It's safe to eat. I can see the green sign, and it pressures those bad restaurants to clean up their act because they don't want to have a yellow or a red sign, and they don't want to have a C or a D rating. They want to have the A or A plus rating. So that's a very simple fix that a lot of other cities introduced years ago that actually had an immediate impact in reducing foodborne illness.
Off the top, you said you talked to a number of kind of more prominent chefs in Edmonton, or chefs who run clean kitchens. Where do they fall in this? Like, what do they want to see change in the industry or change in the inspection system to make it better for diners everywhere?
Yeah, we spoke to some really well-known chefs in the city who run, some of the city's most popular restaurants, and they all shared the view that, you should be transparent, and they invited customers to come in and see their kitchen. Like they said, we don't have anything to hide. Like you're literally putting, your life in our hands. If we serve you something with, E. coli, you could end up in the hospital. So I want you to be confident that when you come to my restaurant, you're going to be safe. So they support stronger enforcement, more frequent inspections, and transparency. A number of chefs we talked about how skip the dishes and Uber Eats has become a huge part of their business, but there's nothing on those apps that can help you differentiate between what is a clean restaurant and what's not. Right? There's no connection to letter grading or color grading that something as simple as that could really give the public confidence that, when you order from this restaurant, it's been recently inspected, the food is going to be safe, and, you're going to be fine if you order from them.
And then what about people who look at this kind of more broadly? What are they saying needs to change in how inspections are handled, or in how reporting of inspection results is handled to make it better for consumers?
Well, the inspection reports in Alberta currently are housed on a government website that is a quite archaic database system. It's not designed from a user's perspective. So that's something that can be overhauled, is that the public could much more easily have access to inspection results to see what's going on in restaurants, and then actually just increase the number of inspections, which we are not doing in Alberta. We have just that non-mandatory target of once a year, and then stronger enforcement. And as we were saying earlier, you see restaurants that are getting critical violation after critical violation, and they're not being shut down. There's no, major penalties for this. So there's no incentive for bad operators to actually change their behavior. If you're just getting inspectors to come in, they cite you for a violation, and there's no serious consequences for being a repeat offender.
And lastly, I guess, because it's all overseen by the provincial health department, or departments, as the province undergoes a lot of changes in the healthcare sector. What does the government say about its system of inspections or how inspections are publicized? What was their response to what your investigation found?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, they declined our request for an interview. We would have been happy to speak with the minister or anyone from government on this. We did get a prepared statement, though. We sent them a long list of questions. And the statement said that, it's not uncommon for inspectors to find some level of non-compliance, but it can vary in severity. And they pointed out that the huge number of violations that we saw in our data set, in their view, shows us that it's working. They're saying that the fact that so many violations have been identified shows how thorough the inspection system is, as opposed to it being a weakness in the system. And they encourage diners to check out the inspection history on the website and to, quote unquote, use their own judgment, noting the general cleanliness of a restaurant.
For you, as someone who's, been around journalism for quite a while, and has done investigations like this before, were there any takeaways for you from this? I mean, either as a journalist or even a restaurant consumer?
I think the takeaway for me is that, customers can make a difference if they're informed. They can, actually talk to these restaurants about their concerns and actually make it a point of discussion. That's one thing that we did here. Is we also spoke to, hundreds of diners that actually eat out on a regular basis and told them what other provinces did. And, 80 or 90% of them were very enthusiastic about, like, why don't we do this? Like, why don't we introduce letter grading systems? Why don't we introduce a color-coded systems or increase inspections? So there is a strong will there if people are informed about what's actually going on. So that gave me confidence that, the best investigative journalism, gives the public the information they need to make informed decisions and, hold those accountable who are making those decisions. So we have a huge number of customers who are demanding change, and even the restaurants themselves are on board for this. So I'm hopeful that there will be some sort of action in relation to this so we can improve restaurant safety.
Mm-hmm. And as we all know, everyone eats out of restaurants, and we all want to go someplace where we can trust that we're not going to get sick and the food we eat is going to be safe. Steve, thanks very much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
10-3 is produced by Sean Knox. Theme music by Bryce Hall. Thanks to my guest, Steve Lillebuen. You can read the whole Risky Restaurants series at edmontonjournal.com. I'm Dave Breakenridge. Thanks for listening.